Car dealership manager kicks out black man. Unaware he is the new owner. Imagine walking into a luxury car dealership, hoping to experience the best service money can buy, only to be judged before you've even said a word. Assumptions, biases, and snap judgments can happen anywhere. But what if the tables were turned? What if the person everyone underestimated had the power to change everything? Cut to a man stepping out of the modest sedan. He's dressed casually, jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie. The contrast between his attire and the lavish setting is striking. He pauses, scanning the dealership, before walking toward the entrance. The camera lingers on the subtle reactions of the staff inside as they notice him approaching. This is Nathaniel Brooks, a man with a plan. He doesn't look like your typical luxury car buyer. And that's exactly the point. Today, Nathaniel isn't just another customer. He's here for something much bigger. What happens next will not only reveal the true culture of this dealership but teach a lesson about respect, integrity, and the power of second chances. The sun was just beginning to rise over Atlanta, Georgia, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The city buzzed with life. But at Atlanta Elite Motors, the day was just beginning. The dealership was known for its luxury vehicles and high-profile clientele. It prided itself on an exclusive reputation, one that demanded excellence from its staff. Nathaniel Brooks, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a commanding presence, pulled into the dealership's lot. His car, an unassuming silver sedan with a slightly dented bumper, seemed out of place among the rows of gleaming luxury cars. Nathaniel stepped out, adjusting his simple blue jacket and tugging on the brim of his faded baseball cap. His worn-out sneakers scuffed against the pavement as he took a moment to observe the sprawling glass-fronted showroom. Nathaniel had recently acquired the dealership as part of a larger investment deal. However, today, he wasn't here as the owner. He wanted to understand the culture of the business he had just taken over, how the staff treated their clients, especially those who didn't fit the mold of their usual clientele. He had decided to keep his identity a secret for the day. As Nathaniel approached the entrance, the automatic doors slid open, and the chilled air from inside swept over him. The showroom was a display of opulence. Sleek black and white tiles reflected the sparkling chandeliers overhead, and rows of luxury cars stood under spotlights, their glossy surfaces gleaming like jewels. The faint scent of leather and fresh polish filled the air. Nathaniel's entrance didn't go unnoticed. Behind the reception desk, 3 staff members exchanged quick glances, their eyes flicking from his scuffed shoes to his weathered cap. Whispers ensued, followed by faint chuckles. Nathaniel caught every nuance but maintained a calm demeanor, taking his time to admire a sleek red sports car on display. "Excuse me, sir," a sharp voice interrupted his musings. Nathaniel turned to see Victoria Sharp, the dealership's sales manager. Her tailored black suit and polished pumps screamed professionalism, but her tight smile hinted at a guarded hostility. Her clipboard rested against her side, a symbol of her authority. Victoria's gaze swept over Nathaniel, her expression betraying her judgment. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her tone professional but tinged with skepticism. Nathaniel smiled warmly. "Just looking around," he replied, gesturing toward the cars. "Looking for anything in particular?" Victoria pressed, her tone now edged with doubt. "Not sure yet. Just wanted to get a feel for the place." Victoria's polite mask faltered slightly, replaced by a flicker of impatience. "Well, our inventory caters to a very specific clientele," she began, her words measured but pointed. "Most of our vehicles require pre-approval. Perhaps I can recommend something more Accessible. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow but kept his voice steady. Accessible? Like what? Victoria hesitated for a moment, then gestured toward the far end of the showroom. We do have a selection of pre-owned vehicles, she suggested, her tone laced with condescension. They're more economical. Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully, hiding the amusement tugging at the corners of his mouth. Interesting. Thanks for the suggestion. Victoria's tight smile returned. Of course. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Nathaniel watched as she walked away, clipboard clutched tightly in her hand. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, echoing in the quiet showroom. He turned his attention back to the cars, hands in his pockets, as he reflected on the interaction. It was going to be an interesting day. Nathaniel wandered deeper into the showroom, his calm demeanor masking the growing intrigue he felt. The staff's subtle glances and whispered comments hadn't gone unnoticed. The tension in the air thickened as he moved toward a stunning black SUV parked under a spotlight, its chrome details shimmering like diamonds. He ran his hand lightly along the smooth, cool surface of the vehicle, his admiration genuine despite the day's purpose. As Nathaniel examined the interior through the tinted windows, a younger salesman approached him. His name tag read Ethan Willis, and his boyish face carried an eager but cautious expression. Ethan adjusted his tie nervously as he stopped a few feet away. "Good morning, sir," Ethan greeted, his tone polite but reserved. "Are you interested in this model? It's one of our premium SUVs, equipped with the latest features." Nathaniel smiled warmly. "It's impressive. I was just admiring the craftsmanship." Ethan nodded, glancing around as if to ensure no one was watching too closely. His hesitance was apparent, but Nathaniel appreciated the effort. "If you'd like, I can grab the brochure or even arrange a closer look." Before Nathaniel could respond, Victoria appeared once more, her presence cutting through the moment like a sharp knife. She placed a hand lightly on Ethan's shoulder, her nails manicured to perfection. "Ethan," she said with a pointed smile, "why don't you focus on assisting clients who are ready to make a purchase?" Ethan's cheeks flushed, and he muttered a quick, "Of course," mus sharp, before retreating toward the reception desk. Victoria turned her attention back to Nathaniel, her expression softening into feigned courtesy. "Apologies for the interruption," she said smoothly. "Ethan is still learning the ropes." "Now, where were we?" Nathaniel tilted his head, his eyes steady on hers. "We were discussing assumptions, I believe," he said, his tone calm but deliberate. Victoria blinked, her smile faltering ever so slightly. "Assumptions?" Nathaniel gestured toward the SUV. "You assumed I wasn't ready to make a purchase. And now, you're assuming I'm wasting your time. Isn't that right?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she recovered quickly. "I simply want to ensure we're matching you with the right vehicle for your needs," she said, her voice clipped but controlled. "And what do you think my needs are?" Nathaniel pressed, his tone still even. Victoria hesitated, her polished demeanor cracking just a bit. "Well, our high-end vehicles are often purchased by clients who..." She trailed off, searching for the right words. "Who meet certain financial qualifications." Nathaniel chuckled softly, the sound carrying a surprising warmth. "That's an interesting way of saying I don't look like your typical customer." Victoria's cheeks flushed slightly, but she held her ground. "It's not about appearances," she insisted. "It's about practicality. We have options that might suit you better." Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully, as though considering her words. "I see. And if I told you I was interested in this SUV, would you believe me?" Victoria hesitated, her sharp gaze faltering under his calm scrutiny. "If you are serious," she said finally, "we can arrange for financing options. But I must warn you, this model starts at 6 figures." Nathaniel smiled faintly, a glimmer of amusement in his eyes. "Good to know. Why don't we put that on hold for now? Instead, I'd like to speak to the owner." Victoria's brows shot up in surprise. "The owner? That's right," Nathaniel said casually, his hands slipping into his pockets. "Think you can arrange that?" Victoria's tight smile returned, now tinged with skepticism. "The owner doesn't typically handle customer inquiries directly," she said, "but if you'd like, I can set up an appointment with one of our senior consultants." Nathaniel held her gaze, unflinching. "How about you give them a call? Let them know I'm here. I think they'd want to meet me." Victoria's confidence faltered momentarily, but she quickly masked it with her usual polished tone. "I'm afraid that won't be possible today," she said firmly. Nathaniel shrugged, his expression unreadable. "No problem," he said, pulling out his phone. "I'll call them myself." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Victoria's face. Nathaniel scrolled through his contacts, his demeanor calm and unbothered. The staff nearby began to whisper among themselves, their curiosity growing. Victoria's composure visibly wavered as Nathaniel lifted the phone to his ear. "Hi, it's me," he said, his tone casual but firm. "I'm at the dealership. Could you come by? I think it's time we had a conversation." He ended the call and slipped his phone back into his pocket, his calm gaze returning to Victoria. "They'll be here shortly," he said simply. Victoria stared at him, her confident facade now cracking under the weight of the unfolding situation. Who did you just call?" Nathaniel smiled faintly but didn't answer. Instead, he turned his attention back to the black SUV, his fingers lightly tracing the edge of the hood. The tension in the room was palpable, and as the minutes ticked by, the staff began to gather quietly, their curiosity piqued. Nathaniel stood calmly amidst it all, a storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. The faint sound of approaching footsteps broke the silence, and the doors of the showroom opened once more. The showroom doors swung open with a soft chime, and the sound of polished shoes striking the tiled floor echoed through the room. The tension in the air grew palpable as a tall man in a tailored navy blue suit strode confidently inside. His presence commanded attention, his sharp features accentuated by neatly combed silver-streaked hair. He was Michael Graves, the regional director of Atlanta Elite Motors. Nathaniel turned slightly, his expression calm but watchful as Michael approached. Victoria immediately straightened her posture, smoothing down her blazer as she moved toward Michael with the haste of someone desperate to explain. "Mr. Graves," she began, her voice a mixture of relief and nervousness, "I wasn't expecting you today. There seems to have been a misunderstanding with one of our visitors." She cast a quick glance toward Nathaniel, her tone heavy with implication. Michael's warm, professional smile didn't waver as his eyes locked onto Nathaniel. "Good to see you again, Nathaniel," he said, extending his hand. The room froze. The staff exchanged bewildered glances, and Victoria's face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Nathaniel grasped Michael's hand in a firm handshake, his smile faint but carrying an air of quiet authority. "Likewise, Michael. Thanks for coming so quickly." Michael turned to Victoria, his demeanor shifting to one of curt professionalism. "Victoria, I assume you've already had the pleasure of meeting Nathaniel Brooks," he said, his tone pointed. Victoria blinked rapidly, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. I didn't realize that he's the new owner of this dealership. Michael finished for her, his sharp tone cutting through her stammering. Well, now you know. The silence in the showroom was deafening. Employees stood frozen, their gazes darting between Nathaniel and Victoria. Some whispered in hushed tones, their curiosity barely concealed. Nathaniel glanced around the room, his calm gaze landing on Victoria. I suppose my casual attire caused some confusion, he said lightly, though his words carried weight. But that's exactly why I came dressed this way, to see how things operate here on a normal day. Victoria's face flushed a deep red, and her polished exterior began to crack under the weight of the revelation. Mr. Brooks, she began, but Nathaniel raised a hand to stop her. Let's save the explanations for later, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. For now, I'd like to speak to the staff. All of them. Michael nodded briskly. Of course. I'll have everyone gathered in the conference room immediately. The conference room at Atlanta Elite Motors was designed to impress. With sleek glass walls, a polished mahogany table, and high-backed leather chairs. It was a space meant for serious discussions. Today, however, it felt unusually stifling as the staff filed in, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. Nathaniel stood at the head of the table, his hands resting lightly on its surface. Michael remained near the door, arms crossed as he observed the room with a critical eye. Victoria sat near the back, her usual confident demeanor replaced by a nervous stillness. She avoided eye contact, her clipboard now resting forgotten on the table. Nathaniel cleared his throat, the sound silencing the quiet murmurs that had begun to ripple through the room. He swept his gaze across the assembled staff, his expression calm but resolute. Thank you all for joining me, he began, his voice steady. For those who don't know, my name is Nathaniel Brooks, and as of last month, I'm the new owner of Atlanta Elite Motors. There was a collective intake of breath, followed by a ripple of murmurs. Some employees exchanged embarrassed glances, while others leaned forward, eager to hear what Nathaniel would say next. I came here today dressed casually for a reason, Nathaniel continued. I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to experience what a potential customer might feel walking through those doors. His gaze shifted momentarily to Victoria, who sank lower in her chair. What I experienced was disappointing, he said, his voice carrying a sharp edge. I was judged, not for my character or my intentions, but for how I looked. The room was silent. Even the faint hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade into the background as Nathaniel's words settled over the group. This isn't just about me, Nathaniel said, his tone softening slightly. It's about every person who walks through these doors. Every customer deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their appearance or background. That's the standard we're going to uphold moving forward. One of the younger sales associates, a woman named Jasmine Carter, hesitated before raising her hand. Nathaniel nodded toward her, encouraging her to speak. Mr. Brooks, she began nervously. I think most of us try to treat customers fairly, but sometimes it's easy to make assumptions without even realizing it. Nathaniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. I understand, he said. We all have biases, whether we're aware of them or not. But it's our responsibility to challenge those biases and create an environment where everyone feels respected. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. This dealership has built a reputation for excellence. But true excellence isn't just about the cars we sell. It's about the experience we provide. From now on, that experience will be built on respect, inclusivity, and fairness. The room seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, though a few faces still held traces of apprehension. Nathaniel's gaze returned to Victoria, who sat frozen in her chair. "Victoria," he said gently but firmly, "I'd like to give you the opportunity to speak. Is there anything you'd like to say?" All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, her voice barely audible when she finally spoke. I made a mistake," she admitted, her cheeks flushed. "I misjudged you, and for that, I'm truly sorry." Nathaniel nodded, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for saying that," he said. "I hope this experience serves as a reminder for all of us, not just you. Change starts with accountability." He straightened, addressing the room as a whole. "Moving forward, we'll be implementing new training programs to ensure this dealership reflects the values I believe in. Every customer deserves dignity, no exceptions." The murmurs of agreement were louder this time, more genuine. Nathaniel's words had struck a chord, and the staff seemed to feel the weight of the change he was demanding. As the meeting concluded, the employees filed out of the room, their expressions a mix of relief and determination. Nathaniel lingered near the door, watching as Victoria approached him hesitantly. "Mr. Brooks," she said, her voice low, "thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. I won't let you down." Nathaniel studied her for a moment before nodding. "I hope you mean that, Victoria," he said. "Actions speak louder than words." As she left, Nathaniel turned to Michael. "Let's set up a follow-up meeting with the staff next week," he said. "I want to make sure everyone understands what's expected moving forward." Michael grinned, his respect for Nathaniel evident. "You've got it, boss." Nathaniel stepped back into the showroom, his gaze drifting over the gleaming cars. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time that day, he felt optimistic. Change was coming to Atlanta Elite Motors, and Nathaniel Brooks was ready to lead the way. Nathaniel spent the rest of the day observing the dealership staff as they returned to their tasks. Despite his calm demeanor during the meeting, his mind buzzed with lingering thoughts. The culture here was deeply ingrained, shaped by years of unchecked behavior. Turning things around wouldn't happen overnight. As Nathaniel leaned against a sleek electric sedan near the showroom's entrance, he noticed Ethan Willis, the young salesman, fidgeting nervously by the desk. His eyes darted toward Nathaniel every few seconds, as though debating whether to approach. Nathaniel caught his gaze and gave a slight nod, silently encouraging him. Ethan hesitated, then walked over. His steps were tentative, but his expression held a spark of determination. "Mr. Brooks," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course," Nathaniel said, gesturing for Ethan to join him near one of the showroom's quieter corners. Ethan glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in slightly. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about earlier. The way Ms. Sharp handled things, it wasn't right." Nathaniel studied Ethan, his expression thoughtful. "Why didn't you speak up?" he asked gently, his tone free of accusation. Ethan flushed, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I guess I didn't want to cause trouble. Victoria runs things around here. And, well, she doesn't exactly take criticism lightly." Nathaniel nodded, understanding the weight of unspoken hierarchies. "Ethan, it takes courage to stand up when something feels wrong. But staying silent allows the problem to grow." Ethan looked up, his expression earnest. "I want to do better. I don't want this place to be like that. How can I help?" Nathaniel smiled faintly, appreciating the young man's sincerity. "You're already helping by being honest. Keep that attitude, and you'll go far." Later that afternoon, Nathaniel decided to take a more hands-on approach. He approached the receptionist, a young woman named Leela Grant, and asked if he could observe the sales process from behind the scenes. Leela, visibly flustered but eager to assist the new owner, quickly complied and led him to a private office where customer negotiations were often conducted. Through the glass partition, Nathaniel observed a tense interaction between David Howard, a senior sales consultant, and a middle-aged man in a plaid shirt who appeared visibly uncomfortable. The man, who had introduced himself as Mark Simmons, seemed to be struggling to keep up with David's high-pressure tactics. "We don't usually negotiate prices on these models," David was saying, his tone firm and unyielding. "But I'm willing to talk numbers if you can show proof of financing today." Mark shifted nervously in his seat, clutching a folder of documents. "I just need some time to." "I'm afraid time isn't on your side," David interrupted, his polished smile doing little to soften his words. "This vehicle has a lot of interest. If you're not ready to commit, someone else will be." Nathaniel frowned, the high-pressure approach clashing with his vision for the dealership. He stepped into the office, his presence immediately drawing startled looks from both men. "David," Nathaniel said evenly, "can I have a word with you?" David's confident smile faltered slightly, but he nodded. "Of course, Mr. Brooks." Mark glanced between them, his expression a mix of confusion and relief. Nathaniel turned to him and offered a reassuring smile. "Mark, why don't you take a moment to look over your options? Leela can bring you some coffee while you decide." Once Mark had stepped out, Nathaniel closed the office door and turned to David. "That was quite the pitch," he said, his tone neutral. David chuckled awkwardly. "Just doing my job, sir. High-end sales require a little push sometimes." "Push," Nathaniel repeated, his voice calm but firm. "All pressure?" David blinked, caught off guard by the question. Well, it's a competitive market. Customers need to understand the value of what we're offering." "And do you think Mark felt valued just now?" Nathaniel asked, his gaze steady. David hesitated, his confidence wavering. "I suppose I could have been gentler." Nathaniel nodded. "This isn't just about selling cars, David. It's about building trust. We're not here to intimidate customers into decisions they're not ready to make. That approach might bring short-term gains, but it'll cost us long-term loyalty." David swallowed hard, the weight of Nathaniel's words sinking in. "Understood, sir. I'll adjust my approach." "I hope so," Nathaniel said, "because the culture here is changing. Starting now." As the day wound down, Nathaniel gathered his thoughts in the owner's office, a space he had yet to personalize. The room's minimalist decor felt cold and impersonal, but it gave him the clarity he needed. Change wouldn't come without resistance, but it was necessary. A knock at the door broke his train of thought. "Come in," he called. Victoria entered, her expression a mix of humility and lingering defensiveness. She clutched a folder to her chest, a subtle sign of her unease. "Mr. Brooks," she began, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it, "I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to make things right. I've spent the day reflecting on everything." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. "And what have you concluded?" Victoria took a deep breath, her hands tightening on the folder. "That I've been so focused on maintaining the dealership's reputation that I lost sight of what really matters, our customers and the team. I let my own biases cloud my judgment. And for that, I'm truly sorry." Nathaniel nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It's a good start, Victoria, but actions speak louder than words." "I know," she said quickly, her tone earnest. That's why I've drafted a proposal for team-wide inclusivity training. I think we can work together to rebuild trust." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, impressed by her initiative. "Let's see what you've come up with." As she handed him the folder, Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be challenging, but perhaps Victoria, and the rest of the team, were ready to rise to the occasion. In the quiet stillness of the showroom, Nathaniel stepped outside to watch the sunset over Atlanta. The sky was painted in fiery hues, a stark contrast to the day's tense moments. He took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about running a business, it was about leading a cultural shift. One that would challenge assumptions and inspire change. And Nathaniel Brooks was ready to take the next step. The following morning, Nathaniel arrived at Atlanta Elite Motors earlier than usual. The crisp Atlanta air carried the promise of a fresh start, and the dealership was bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. Nathaniel had spent the previous evening reviewing Victoria's proposal for inclusivity training and brainstorming additional steps to foster a culture shift. Today marked the beginning of implementing those changes. As the staff trickled in, they found Nathaniel waiting in the conference room, his demeanor calm but purposeful. By 8:30 a.m., the team was assembled, their expressions ranging from curious to apprehensive. Victoria sat closer to the front this time, her clipboard neatly tucked away as if signaling her willingness to embrace the change. "Good morning, everyone," Nathaniel began, his voice steady and inviting. "I appreciate you all coming in early today. What we're about to discuss is crucial, not just for the success of this dealership but for who we are as a team." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Yesterday was an eye-opener. It revealed some gaps in how we treat our customers, and each other. Today, we're going to start closing those gaps. Nathaniel stepped aside to reveal a whiteboard with the words core values: respect, inclusion, trust written in bold letters. These three principles will define everything we do moving forward. And I don't just mean with our customers. This applies to how we treat each other as colleagues, too. As Nathaniel spoke, the showroom began to buzz with its usual activity. Customers trickled in, browsing the gleaming cars under the guidance of sales associates. Among them was a middle-aged woman named Marie Tucker, dressed in a simple cardigan and carrying a tattered purse. She seemed out of place among the dealership's usual clientele, her nervous glances betraying a sense of unease. Ethan noticed her first, remembering his conversation with Nathaniel the previous day. He approached with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mom. Welcome to Atlanta Elite Motors. How can I assist you today?" Marie looked relieved by his friendly demeanor. "Oh, I'm just looking," she said hesitantly. "I've always admired these kinds of cars. But, well, they're probably out of my league." Ethan shook his head gently. "You'd be surprised. Mom, let me show you some options. We've got a range of vehicles, and I'd be happy to find something that suits your needs." From his vantage point in the conference room, Nathaniel observed the interaction with a small smile. Ethan's shift in attitude was subtle but significant, a step in the right direction. Victoria, who had also noticed the exchange, leaned toward Nathaniel. "It seems Ethan's taking your advice to heart," she murmured. Nathaniel nodded. "One step at a time," he replied, "but consistency is key." As the day progressed, the team faced its first real test. A man named Roger Fields, wearing an expensive tailored suit and exuding an air of entitlement, entered the showroom. His booming voice immediately commanded attention as he demanded to see the dealership's best model. David, eager to impress, quickly stepped in to assist. Roger's abrasive demeanor didn't faze him. He was used to catering to high-maintenance clients. But as the conversation unfolded, Roger began berating the staff, dismissing their suggestions and interrupting their explanations. Nathaniel watched from a distance, his brows furrowing. He stepped forward, intervening just as Roger raised his voice at Leela, who had been tasked with retrieving brochures. "Mr. Fields," Nathaniel said, his tone calm but firm, "we value all of our customers, but we also expect mutual respect. If there's something specific you're looking for, I'd be happy to help you personally." Roger blinked, taken aback by Nathaniel's directness. "And you are?" "I'm Nathaniel Brooks," he replied, extending a hand. "The owner." Roger's bluster faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Well, Mr. Brooks, I appreciate the personal attention. I just expect a certain level of service from an establishment like this. And we strive to meet that standard for every customer," Nathaniel said evenly. "But service doesn't mean tolerating disrespect toward my staff. Let's start fresh, shall we?" Roger's expression shifted, a mix of embarrassment and grudging respect. "Fair enough," he muttered. "Let's see what you've got." Later that afternoon, Nathaniel gathered the team in the break room for a more informal meeting. Over cups of coffee, he recounted the day's events, praising Ethan's kindness toward Marie and addressing the challenges posed by clients like Roger. "Dealing with difficult customers doesn't mean compromising our values," Nathaniel said, his tone conversational but firm. "It means setting boundaries while still delivering exceptional service." Victoria, who had remained quiet for most of the meeting, finally spoke up. "I've been thinking about yesterday's conversation," she began, "and I realized I've been so focused on outcomes, sales numbers, client profiles, that I forgot about the human side of this business. That's going to change." Her admission earned a few nods of agreement from the team. Nathaniel smiled, sensing the shift in the room. "It's never too late to change," he said, "and it starts with moments like these." As the sun began to set, Nathaniel stood outside the dealership, watching as Marie drove off in a pre-owned sedan Ethan had helped her find. She waved enthusiastically, her smile radiant with gratitude. It wasn't the most expensive sale of the day, but to Nathaniel, it was the most meaningful. Victoria joined him, her arms crossed as she leaned against the glass doors. "She seems happy," she remarked. "She is," Nathaniel replied, "and so am I. This is what success looks like, not just numbers, but moments." Victoria nodded slowly, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "I'll admit, I didn't see the value in this approach at first. But now, it makes sense. It always does when you put people first," Nathaniel said, as the day came to a close. The dealership felt different. The shift Nathaniel had envisioned was beginning to take root. And though the road ahead would be challenging, he felt confident that the team was on the right path. The following week marked the beginning of a new chapter for Atlanta Elite Motors. Nathaniel had spent the past days meeting one-on-one with employees, listening to their concerns and ideas for improvement. The inclusivity training Victoria proposed had been scheduled, and the dealership's culture was already beginning to shift. On Monday morning, the staff gathered in the showroom, where Nathaniel stood near the central display, a sleek silver luxury coupe gleaming under the spotlights. His presence carried a quiet authority, and the employees looked to him with a mix of respect and anticipation. "Good morning, everyone," Nathaniel began, his voice steady and warm. "I want to thank each of you for your efforts this past week. Change isn't easy, but you've shown a willingness to adapt, and that speaks volumes." He paused, letting his words resonate before continuing. "Today, we're setting a new standard. One that prioritizes respect, inclusion, and trust, not just for our customers but for each other. These aren't just words on a board. They're the foundation of everything we'll do moving forward. As the day unfolded, the team had its first opportunity to put these principles into action. A young couple, Angela and Robert Hayes, walked into the showroom. Angela was visibly pregnant, and their modest attire suggested they were far from the dealership's typical clientele. Their hopeful expressions, however, hinted at big dreams. Victoria, eager to demonstrate her growth, approached them with genuine warmth. "Welcome to Atlanta Elite Motors," she said, her tone friendly and inviting. "How can I assist you today?" Angela hesitated, glancing at Robert before speaking. "We're just looking for now. We've been saving for a while, and we wanted to see what's out there." Victoria smiled, her demeanor completely transformed from the dismissive attitude she had once displayed. "That's wonderful," she said. "Let me show you a few options that might fit your budget and your growing family's needs." From across the room, Nathaniel watched the interaction with quiet satisfaction. It was a small moment, but it symbolized the cultural shift he had been working so hard to foster. Midway through the afternoon, an older man named Walter Chambers entered the dealership. He wore a sharp suit and carried an air of authority, his silver hair neatly combed back. He approached Nathaniel directly, his handshake firm. "You must be Nathaniel Brooks," Walter said, his voice deep and steady. "I've heard a lot about you." Nathaniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "And you are Walter Chambers?" The man replied. "I was the previous owner of Atlanta Elite Motors. I came by to see how the place is doing." Nathaniel nodded, motioning for Walter to join him in the corner of the showroom. "I appreciate you stopping by, Mr. Chambers. The dealership has a strong foundation. Thanks to you." Walter chuckled, though his expression turned serious. "Strong, yes, but I'll admit, I didn't always prioritize the right things. I hear you've been shaking things up here. I believe in running a business where everyone feels valued." Nathaniel said simply. "That starts with changing how we approach our customers and each other." Walter studied him for a moment, then nodded. "That's good to hear. I wasn't always as hands-on as I should have been. Sounds like you're building something better." "I'm trying," Nathaniel said, his tone modest but resolute. "It's a work in progress, but we're getting there." Walter clapped him on the shoulder. "Keep at it. This place has potential, and so do you." By the end of the day, Angela and Robert had finalized the purchase of a pre-owned SUV. Their faces beaming with pride. The staff gathered around to congratulate them, their genuine support creating a sense of community that hadn't existed before. As the couple drove away, Angela leaned out the window, waving enthusiastically. "Thank you for everything," she called. Nathaniel watched them go, a smile tugging at his lips. Moments like these reminded him why he had taken on the challenge of transforming the dealership. That evening, after the staff had gone home and the showroom lights had dimmed, Nathaniel sat alone in the owner's office. The day's events played in his mind, the progress they had made, the hurdles that still lay ahead. Michael Graves knocked softly on the door before stepping inside. "Still here?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face. "Just thinking." Michael sat across from him, his expression thoughtful. "You've done a lot in a short amount of time. The team respects you, Nathaniel. They're starting to believe in the changes you're making." "It's not about me," Nathaniel said quietly. "It's about creating a place where people feel valued, where they can grow and succeed." Michael nodded. "Well, you're doing it, one step at a time." As Michael left, Nathaniel gazed out the window at the Atlanta skyline. The challenges weren't over, but the dealership was no longer just a business. It was becoming a community, one built on trust, respect, and integrity. And Nathaniel Brooks was ready for whatever came next. Nathaniel Brooks didn't just change a car dealership. He sparked something bigger, a place where every customer is valued, regardless of their background or appearance. This isn't just a story about luxury cars. It's a story about people, about challenging assumptions, and about building a legacy rooted in respect and integrity. This story reminds us of an important lesson. Never judge someone by their appearance. Be open, be kind, and treat everyone with respect. Because that doesn't just change others, it changes us, too. If this story resonated with you and inspired you, help us share more stories like this. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the Story Atelier, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest videos. Your subscription is a huge support for us to continue bringing you meaningful and impactful stories.